The next scenario I'd like to take a look at is updating a report continuously and building it up over time from live values. So in this example, I'm going to design a report that collects daily flow totals from a PLC and updates them onto a monthly report sheet, which is then summarized on an annual executive summary sheet. So I'm going to go into the Template Studio from the Home tab of the Project Explorer. I'm going to create a new template. We'll call this one Annual Flow, and we'll use a report type template, and I'm going to base it on an existing workbook I have saved on the system. We'll use the annual production file there, and here you can see that in this template you have 13 sheets. One of them is an annual summary sheet, and then there are 12 sheets that represent the different months of the year, and on each of those monthly sheets you can see that there's an area for daily values coming from 8 different points in a water treatment operation in which you'd be measuring flow totals. So you have basically 8 stations where you're going to take down the daily flow total, and it's going to be summarized over the month on these different summary formulas that we have here and the different chart objects that exist on each of these sheets. And then the annual summary sheet is going to play off of the summary values on each of the monthly sheets. So how do we begin driving data into this template so we can create a report? Well, that's done from the Connect menu. And the Connect menu basically allows you to map points from the PLC into locations in the template workbook. So to add a connection, I set the connector to my PLC connector, which is XLRDA, the simulator in my case, and then I'll open up this radio button next to Add Group. And here on this list, I can open up a tag browser that will go live to the PLC, and I can add in the 8 different flow meters I want to measure. Now, in my simulator, I've really only got 4, so we'll just have to duplicate them and use our imaginations here. Now, also, if I preview the data group, we can see live values coming off these tags. By default, the first column that comes back is going to be a timestamp column. Now, since we want to map this data into this area here, and we're already including the date just as a hard-coded column value, then we don't really need that timestamp, and you can take it off using this output options feature here. Now when I close the group and I save it, by default it's going to apply a naming convention that's going to name the group after the template that we're in. That works fine for me. It's probably a good naming convention to use, so I'll stick with it. And then I'm going to add the data group into F5 here on this monthly sheet. Now because the data group has to move around all 12 of these sheets in order for the report to work, I'm going to leave the scope as any sheet so it allows that to move. And then in order to allow the data to move down each worksheet based on the system day, I'm going to change the placement type from direct to offset down on little d, big M, which is day of month. And no, you don't have to learn this obscure shorthand language here. You can use this browser to select the offset that you want to use. So if you were doing 15-minute turbidity values over the day, you could do minute of the day /15, for example. But you can basically build any kind of a time-based offset. Now, what the offset actually does is it reserves a space inside of the sheet on which the connection is allowed to place the data. So because we're starting at F5 and the offset is based on little d big M, if we run this report on the 27th of August, it's going to go onto the AUG sheet into the 27th row down from row 5 and place the data here in this row. So if I add that connection to the template, I can save it, and then if I preview, we can select the AUG sheet, refresh the preview, and if I go there, you can see that the data does land on the correct row. That's all just because of the offset. Now, how do we allow the data to move around each sheet automatically? That's actually handled by the naming convention of the template. And the naming convention is done in report names. And so here, because the report, the scope of the whole report workbook is for a year, at the workbook level, we would assign year onto the name of the report. And so if we ran it right now, the report file would be annual flow 2020. Now, in order to allow the connection to move between each of the sheets, we actually use this wildcard setting here under Worksheet, and we can set the name of the wildcard sheet to 3-digit or 3-character month name. If you notice, that's how all of these sheets are named here. And this is kind of a advanced trick, I guess, if you will. We can update the wildcard sheet on the project schedule, and that will allow the data to be placed on the appropriate sheet based on the month determined in the system time. So why don't we try that now? Let's go into the schedule designer, and I can add an action in here. And let me just save and close the template real quick here. In the schedule designer, we can add an action. The action we want is going to be daily, and we want to do it at the very end of the day in my case, because we're working with flow total accumulator values in the PLC that reset daily. So we'll get the daily total just by measuring the value at the last possible moment before they reset. So we'll do daily at 11:59 p.m. And the action that we want is going to be updating that wildcard sheet in the template. Now, it's not available through the browser there, so you just have to pick a sheet and then replace it with the wildcard. Once I do that, I can actually test this and simulate how the report would run over a period of time. Now, because we're using live data in the PLC, we don't really have any concept of history there. All we can do is ask the PLC for the tag value, and it gives us whatever value it has at that moment in time. So we're not really backfilling data per se in this case, but we can simulate the formatting and the data placement and the naming convention. All that stuff will still function from this test menu, so why don't we give it a try so we can see how it would work over a period of a few months. So let's say we do July 1st at 11:59 through today, and actually that would be 23:59 in 24-hour time format, and we'll do that to the same time on today's date. And I'll just let that go through. It'll only take a moment here to run roughly those 2 months or so. And then I can close and save the schedule designer. And I can go into the scheduled report viewer for XLReporter. Select the annual flow template. Here's my annual flow 2020 report file. In that report file, I've got all 13 sheets that I had in the template. You can see on the annual sheet that the 2 months that we ran are summarized there. And that's because the data on the July and August sheets is filled out. So July is totally filled out, and then August is filled out up to the current day, which is where we stopped the test. And you can see all the formulas and charts and everything are just driving off of us placing data into those cells. So normally in Excel, if you wanted to fill something like this out automatically, or manually rather, you could just go and type the values in and drive the content of your workbook. Essentially what XLReporter is doing is just taking a workbook that you're already familiar with working with and familiar with how to design, and it's just automating the data entry process using a scheduler and a PLC driver. And so that's just one example of how you could run reports automatically with Report As You Run technology, build up an annual summary report just by incrementally adding values in the PLC every day.